Okay, so we're recording. This is Black Sci-Fi Book Club. Meeting number, I don't know what number. Today we're talking about Obelisk Gate, second book in N.K. Jameson's Broken Earth trilogy. And
oh, I'm back. My internet's pooped out.
Oh, tonight with the internet.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit right on top of my router.
That sounds kind of painful, homie. Should we do intros? I feel like we usually do some sort of intro thing, a little intro question. Just to share a little bit about ourselves to people.
Yeah, let's do it. I
feel like the thing that's coming to my mind is favorite author, but that's too easy.
We could do.
What about? Oh yeah, you
That's
go.
too hard.
Yeah. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes.
Great.
All right, I'll start. My name is Reed, and much to the chagrin of all of my family and friends, my favorite ice cream flavor is vanilla. Plain vanilla.
That doesn't make any sense.
I wish I was joking. But I always, I'll try something new. I'll try a new flavor just to try to disprove to myself that my favorite flavor isn't vanilla. And I always realize I don't like it. It has to be vanilla.
That's shocking. I mean, there's some good vanillas out there, so I'll go. My favorite is butter pecan, and that's probably mostly from my grandmother's very southern upbringing. It was pretty much the only ice cream she ever had in her house, and so it reminds me of her and summers with her. But I actually got asked a question in an interview relatively recently about if you could be, I don't know if it was if you could be or if my current organization could be an ice cream flavor, what would it be? And I said butter pecan. We'll go into that another time, but that's my favorite.
True. Also, who are you? Oh, you're muted.
Technology is so difficult. I'm Bernadette Miracle, and I work out of the land of Snoqualmie, which is just east of the land that we talk about as Seattle nowadays.
And I'm Lawrence. I am in, what some people call Boston, occupied Wampanoag territory. And my favorite ice cream flavor is hands down cookies and cream. Like no questions, no doubts. Never am I confused about that. I've worked at one ice cream shop. It was my favorite flavor before that. It was definitely my favorite flavor there. And now I live near a different ice cream shop, and it's my favorite flavor at that ice cream shop. I just love crunching into like a good chocolate cookie in the middle of my vanilla ice cream. I do also like vanilla, but I gotta have something in it. I can't. No, but it can't be plain vanilla like that. No. I don't want to say it's boring because I know you like it, but I need a little extra.
Ooh,
Okay, well, let's do this.
yeah.
The Obelisk Gate.
Obelisk. So I finished reading this like 5 months ago. So I had to remind myself of all of the plot before I recall and like what happened.
How did you do that?
Because I started reading it immediately after we finished the 5th season because I just couldn't stop myself. Yeah.
But how did you remember? Like, how did you remind yourself of the plot, given that you finished it 5 months ago? Like, did you skim it or like cliff notes it or what?
Yeah, I went chapter by chapter and just read like the first page, and that was basically enough. There's not like an awful lot of, unlike the first book, like there isn't as much like movement of the characters, except for Nasun. But it's like most of it just happens in Kastrima.
I finished it like 2 weeks ago, maybe last week. So I'm feeling very fresh. Bernadette, when did you wrap it up? Oh no, you're muted again.
I got. I'm gonna figure it out, y'all. I got a different setup today. I got close to finish about a month ago, and finished about 3 weeks ago. So also relatively fresh. I mean, considering all the other things that have happened, but yes.
So like highlights. What maybe we each share like most, like what's one highlight moment you remember, and then one moment where you were like real upset or like sad.
I'll start with one highlight. I loved learning about this like inter-Stone Eater war that seems to be happening at this like kind of meta level that none of us really quite understand yet is probably shaping like everything about this like universe and about what's like the context of everything that's happening. And it's really unclear like what are like the motivations of the Stone Eaters. Like we know there's some sort of I think Alabasta there's like 3 sides to this like war, and like the Stone Eaters are split among them. And like the fact that we know like Hoa, I think how to pronounce his name, like has some sort of like attraction. And yes, like the introduction of all these new Stone Eaters feels like it just changes like the entire like level of what the book is about. Like it's these other beings that nobody knows about, and we don't even know that much about them except they have these like huge fights that involve humans.
Mm-hmm.
Bernadette, what you thinking?
I think it's not even really like, it's not a particular scene or chapter. Sorry about the noise, but more along the storyline of like Alabaster's use of power and how it's like slowly killing him and turning him to stone. And as y'all know from every time I read these books, so I'm always making the connections to like today and this whole space. And I guess I was really connecting to how that was progressing, just because we've had a lot of conversations at my org around just like racial reconciliation, and how like without it being about all of us, not just about like freeing Black folks or like getting white folks to do different, that like the whole alabaster turning to stone is like literally white folks turning to stone, not doing, just kind of hoarding power and not doing the work. But particularly in Seattle, where there are a lot of folks who are very like, my intent is good, his intent is good. Like, I want to like stop these cycles, but just kind of watching the whole slow progression of that, and the throughout this particular book, the like coming wars and stuff is just I think I connected it way too much to like modern day stuff to like really get to a space of like, there's this one particular scene that was really amazing to me. But let me look, because I have a lot of dog ears, so I might find another.
Well, while you're looking, I'll jump in with one, and you should feel free to jump back in. I think the highlight of the book for me was the like moments where Essen's daughter, whose name I'm forgetting right now, not Nasin or Nasin. I was saying Nasin in my head the whole time. She was like, when she is just like wrecks her dad. Like, I was so happy. Which is kind of, I mean, I don't know, could be considered dark. But I was like, yeah, fuck this guy. Like, fuck this asshole who, you know,
In a good way.
like killed her sibling and is trying to get her to remove her superpower. Like, I definitely make the parallels, like you, Bernadette. So like I was like, it seems like, I mean, the parallel I made was like, this white dude is like trying to get this Black person to like give up their Blackness, or like get such a high level of ability, like racial ability, to so that they could like remove their race, which just felt like the parallel to it felt like a colorblind approach. Like, I don't see color, or I do see color, but because I don't want to see color, you can't have any. And I was just pissed at that dude the whole time. And I think he was written as a character to be disliked, but when Nassim was like, you know what? I don't fucking need you. I was very happy.
I think that like entire relationship was like one of the most powerful pieces in this book. He does, like, when you say that he was written as someone to be disliked, in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, definitely the case. But it's also the way it was written so they could understand her perspective as this like kid trying to navigate this person she used to like trust and love, who's now like oppressing her and preventing her from literally using her magic. I felt like that was just, I was like terrified for her the entire time. Like, oh no, don't piss off this guy. Don't like make him mad. Like, tiptoe around this issue. And then that moment where she's like, no, forget this. Like, I'm gonna use my like who I am and my magic, was so powerful, and really scary at the same time. It's like, oh my gosh, like, you have been trying to survive this entire time by appeasing this person you used to trust. Yeah, I will agree that was. I'm gonna change my vote. I think that's also one of the best moments.
Brenda, did you find others?
All right, got it back. You froze for a bit. But yeah, that whole relationship, and one, it was to the point of exciting. It was also like somewhat devastating for me, just the own personal history, etc., and watching my daughter with her dad and all the kinds of things that like come up around, so many layers to that dynamic. But like one particular line that like really I had to put the book down for a moment and then come back to it towards the end was as he's like recognizing like, you are so much like your mother, so beautiful, so strong. And then she's like, yeah, I am, but love always comes bound in terrible things. It's a terrible thing that I'm like my mother, that I couldn't quote unquote be cured and be different. And that whole line about like love and like so much of what a lot of people talk about in like the world of like people getting over their racism, their homophobia, et cetera, is, well, if you know someone or if you love someone, then it'll get better. Like just by nature of knowing or loving someone who is whatever you're afraid of, whatever you're against, that it'll be better. And I'm like, there's this daughter-father relationship where you would presume that love is pretty clearly at the foundation of that. And it isn't. I mean, to the point that he's like, oh, if you can't be cured and you can't be the way I want you to be, then there's no way I can love you. And her both disappointment in that, and I'll definitely say that I was like a little bit disappointed myself that it was in a moment of like extreme fear and anger that she turned him to stone. That like to me, I'm like, oh, it would have been great if she like came to her epiphany and it was like I'm completely level-headed and clear about like what I'm about to do now. But that she got pushed to a space where it was like all the things that we tend to term as like negative emotions that got her to break free from that particular relationship was also telling in and of itself.
Yeah, I appreciate the complexity that you're bringing into this. And definitely noting that Reed and I don't have children. Oh no! I guess she got disconnected. Well, I guess I'll just say, while Bernadette is reconnecting, that yeah, I appreciate the nuance that she just brought in with that, because as someone who has no children and as someone who has never had any dynamic that felt like this, really, I appreciate the fact that it's more complicated than fuck this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just processing what Bernadette said, and I was thinking about in her father's relationship. It's so extreme, but the basic message is that like he wants her to be something she's not, and that expectation, it's just like it was killing her basically, or risked her death. Like we have that expectation in such smaller levels of like so many things in relationships. At least I've had friendships and relationships. So it made me think about like the unexpected harm I could have done, like to my expectations, without having knowing. Even if it's just a small thing, it's just Yeah, there's a lot to chew on.
Sorry, gentlemen.
Are you there?
Like, yeah, I can't. It won't let me join back on video, so I'll keep trying on that. But I figured I'd call in at the very least so not miss half the conversation.
Great. Yeah, we were just talking about it's like processing what you said, and the fact that like we don't have like children, so there's like layers to this relationship that are hard for us to like process. But at the same time, it's like any type of interpersonal relationship where you might have power over someone, or they expect something from you. What are your expectations of that person, and how your expectations impact their behavior, desires?
Yep.
I think it's all like, yeah, it's like all visible in that relationship with Nasa and her father. So Lawrence, your original question, it was like highs and lows of the book. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I really want to talk about, because I don't know how to interpret it, and it was confusing for me to read the entire time of trying to place this new person, but the new Shafa, and like the damage that was caused to him, and how this totally changed who he is in a sense of self. And he still doesn't quite know who he is, and now he has this like inclination to do things that are totally against whatever this like chip in his head wants him to do, and it's causing him pain, yet he can't help feel like he's doing the right thing. Yeah, what did you two like make of that, and like make of his change and his like continued like brutality, yet sense of like new moral like compass at the same time?
I mean, I'm really excited for Shafa's character arc. Given how it's been so far, I feel hopeful about where it's going. And I feel you on the confusion. Still feel very lost. Yeah, the core stone thing, I think, is the thing that's like in his brain, and that's in the Guardian's brains, and that what's the leadership? What's her name? Her name was not Bidoof. What the heck was her name? Tonki. When Tonki like tries to grab one and it like goes into her body and then like tries to get to her brain. Yes, so terrifying. And then Essen cuts her arm off. Like, what? And then puts it back on. Okay, anyways. Whatever those things are, whatever Shafa's relationship is to his core stone, I'm deeply confused, and also just feel like the core stones have to do something with like Father Earth. I can only imagine them as like some sort of control mechanism, and that there's like some way. These are all predictions. I'm banging this fully up, but I imagine that like Father Earth.
You're like, I've read the book. Let me tell you what's going to happen.
I mean, yeah, I would never do that. I just imagine Father Earth is like controlling Guardians with these little core stones, and Shafa, and so the core stone is a way for Guardians to like draw on the power of the Earth to find some sort of immortality. But something goes wrong when Shafa dies, and so his like drawing from Earth's immortality, or drawing from Earth's energy to be immortal, like doesn't go all the way. And so he like resists a little bit, and that's the space where there's like some agency. And the last thing I'll say before I want to hear what Bernadette you were thinking, what was interesting to me about what's happening with Shafa is it's parallel to what I learned in my mindfulness teaching course, which is that one of the main powers of mindfulness is inserting space between a stimulus and a response. And so what mindfulness allows you to do is, something happens to you, and when you're not mindful, you just react from a place of habit, trauma, mostly those two things. And mindfulness allows you to slow things down and choose how you react to the stimulus. And this just felt like a really beautiful analog of that. Like, he gets to choose whether or not he wants to listen to his core stone and whatever the core stone is attached to. Okay, that's my theory. Bernadette, what do you think?
That's a really fascinating theory, especially the space around choice. Like, here I was thinking like, oh, woe is him. Like, there is no choice in the matter. And that would be now I'm sitting here like, what if, yeah, the choice element is really fascinating, because it's like, it brings into both the space around like conscious choice and unconscious choice, right? Like, so how am I trying to say this? The unconscious choice space around like the things that happen or that he does that seem to be, at least on face value, written from a space of like, oh, I had this thing happen to me, I'm brain damaged, I can't control things. Whereas it would be a completely different read on it to be like, no, but actually you can choose if you're going to, how you're going to engage with the world, how you're going to claim your superpowers or not. And that piece around like how you're going to claim your superpowers definitely makes me think, of course, as always, think in connection to like current world stuff around like, I work a lot with people who sometimes feel like they don't have agency over their lives and that they don't get to choose, that things are certainly done to them in a society that was definitely designed to not make certain people powerful. But as easy as I say to those folks, like, you get choices, like you get to choose how you respond, how you engage, how you resist, all those kinds of things. I was so quick and easy to like shut off the choice function for them and be like, oh, because you're brain damaged now. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it was so easy for me to like attach choice to like a cognitive brain function, and to hear you talk about it theoretically from this space of like, there's that core is like something that is just innate and something that you would probably more feel and experience than think about, is a whole different kind of form of choice that I wasn't even thinking about in the context of a storyline. So yeah, now I'm like deep in the inner earth geodes of like, so how does this play out for everybody else in that context of a potential thought line of what choice means?
Reed, how are you understanding Shafa.
Yeah, I think I've mostly been. I mean, I mostly like understood Shafa in the book, like in this book, through his relationship with Nassan, um, because that's mostly how we mostly understand Shafa in the first book through his relationship with Essen, and the relationship with Essen in the first book is all about him controlling her essentially, and the relationship with Nassan is very different. But it's also like going back to Nassan's relationship with Jija or her father. Like I feel like everything about how like we're understanding Shafa right now is through the lens of Nassun, who's just looking for someone who will like provide basic physical comfort for her and like protect her, not harm her. So I'm still like I have a hopeful arc for him as well, that he will be some sort of like figure that like sheds light on like what the brutality that Guardians themselves have experienced to become who they are. But I'm skeptical of that until I can see him not through the lens of Nasun, who's just like kind of this very vulnerable child right now and trying to like find someone who will provide even like the most basic level of like care. So I'm holding a little bit my judgment for him. I feel like there's just like so much that could happen to him in the next book. So I'm excited to see where his arc goes next, basically, as we're saying. Yeah.
And can we talk for a second about that flashback moment where he remembers his like core stone being put in? Or I think he's describing to Nassan like being in some chair and like him fighting the chair.
Yeah.
And something going into his brain, like.
Yeah, it was like the same chair. It was the same chair that the Guardians now themselves use to hold the node maintainers, like that we learned about in the first book. It was like kind of wire mesh chair, and so it's obviously this like chair that wasn't themselves built by the Guardians. Maybe some connection to like how Father Earth first created this whole apparatus of controlling Guardians, and maybe controlling the Guardians that control the Oregonese. So yeah, I think that was a really illustrative moment because it showed us that like, okay, these Guardians themselves are a part of this like apparatus that they don't control themselves. Like, they don't have control over. Like, who's doing what?
I want to talk about magic.
Yeah.
Before we talk about magic, Bernadette, I'm wondering, just because of your analysis, if there was a toughest moment. Maybe you said this already, but like as someone who is a parent, did you find a moment in the book that was like the toughest to look at?
Yeah, I do think it's both the like I said a little bit earlier, both the space of that father-daughter relationship, and I think if it were the moment piece, the toughest part was the moment when she did turn him to stone, because it was just like such opposite ends of the feeling spectrum of like, yes, get it, and also, oh God, there was my hope gone, like that. Thing would come better of this kind of space. And so I think to be fair, I think it was probably more like, yes, get it, like let's break free of these chains. But it was also like, particularly from the space of like the parental relationship and the idealistic, like things can be better in this new world, right? Kind of space that it wasn't, was a little bit heartbreaking.
True.
So Lawrence, tell us about magic.
I mean, I can't tell you shit about it. I'm just fascinated by its revelation, or like the way that, you know, Jameson is revealing this like whole other reality, like a parallel. I mean, it's like a universe within this universe. And I really love how Essen and Nassim are both like learning about it.
Yeah.
In parallel, but like not knowing each other or learning about it until the moment where, like where Essen actually finds Nassim again when she's like working through the obelisk gate, and she's like, "Oh shit, one of the obelisks isn't coming. I wonder what's going on. Oh, it's my child." Like, I was so happy in that moment. And yeah, I'm just so curious where that's going. And I feel like, you know, Bernadette, to your point earlier, like watching Alabaster die. I mean, my perception was like Alabaster died to be teaching Essen what she needed to know while not allowing her to do more damage than the world could handle. Maybe you see that differently, but I'm just fascinated that Alabaster gave his last energy kind of like shielding the world from Essen going too deep into magic world or into magic territory. And I definitely don't understand what's happening with the like rebirths of the Stone Eaters in these like mini geodes that are like full of magic somehow. And what?
Yes. That part. As an avid crystal / rock collector, I'm just like, oh, the earth has magic.
Interesting. Say more about what you are seeing in that stuff as an avid crystal and rock collector.
Yeah, like, I mean, literally being like, okay, first of all, Jameson's world building is out of this world. And so, like, I would get so immersed that it'd be hard to be like, this is a book. This is made up. It's not like, let's go Google that and find out if I can get some of that. Because, like, it's I mean, my daughter does this now. Like, she picks up, not like I collect like crystal stones, but like we'll be walking around the park or even our neighborhood, and she'll see a rock and just be like, oh, I got to pick that rock up. And like the imagination she has around what it's capable of, it probably is why I was like so drawn into like these little nuggets of magic holding. And it was a delight to read those parts.
I definitely have started to think about my crystals differently. What did you think about, or did you make any connections to like specific stones you have and specific stones that were in the book? Like, I know that, was it Nassim connects to the sapphire obelisk, and Essen like Alabaster was saying, Alabaster sent Essen up to the surface to like summon the topaz and something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that a lot of the specific ones that they'd mentioned were like high-end gem kind of crystals and stones, right? And so when I first, way back at the first book, was like reading through, oh, they came across this substance or they came across that substance, I'd be like, okay, so what? I'd have a mind's eye picture of what I thought that substance looked like, and topaz and sapphire are really great examples of like they come in so many different colors and they come in so many different forms is not the word I'm looking for, but they present themselves in different ways that like as I'd have in my mind's eye like, okay, this is a blue Jimmy sapphire that we're talking about. As I read more about like, okay, well actually this is like end of world time, and so like nobody's polishing gems. So like what would fresh out of the ground sapphire look like, and how she's able to like describe that, and then the energy that kind of emanates from that, and how people are able to use that and harvest that. I was just like, okay, well, let me get over my like I need the perfect sapphire and go find me some like just raw untouched stuff that might actually be far more powerful.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I definitely was imagining them all being like perfect. But I like what you're adding there. Like, yeah, maybe there's a ton of power in them not being perfect.
Or they are perfect naturally, the way they naturally.
Oh my gosh.
And they're not altered by like our version of human version of like, okay, now this is what a sapphire should look like.
Yeah, well played.
And in that refining process, just like with our foods, right? Like when we refine, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes that y'all can't see, but like when we refine our foods, we strip them of their like essential nutrients and the actual qualities that they can use to heal us with. I think the same with like stones. Like we keep stripping away facets and facets and facets, and it's when they're in their natural, raw, complete state that they're far more perfect and far more powerful. And so I imagined that a lot of times when they're like talking about sapphire, topaz, etc., that like you could walk by it, and unless you were connected and you knew, you wouldn't automatically like I think most people nowadays, maybe they wouldn't know it's a sapphire, it's a topaz, etc., but like walking past a polished stone, like on display in a store window, they'd know, or on the ground even, like if you were so lucky, but like you'd know, oh, this is something special. But like in this book, I feel like you have to know in a different way than like your seeing eyes to know and tap into the magic that are the stones here.
Yeah, I think what I loved about it's like the introduction of it's like magic into this book is that it changes everything, and you think you know this world. Like she's built like the first book up, helping you understand this world and how it works, and it's like crazy logic and rules. But then you learn about magic, and you learn that okay, everything you thought you knew that's not right. Like everything that you've been like told in this book happened through like the lens mostly of like the fulcrum about how the world works. Like, no, that's not right. There's this whole another way the world works, and like the magic that's probably happening in this like that geode where they live that explains how they're able to like breathe underneath the ground. Like there was something there before that helped explain. That was like the operating mode of the world, like this magic. It was there before. People likely forgot about it. Now Alabaster knows about it again, and it just changes everything. And I think about that, like that, like the work I do and like personal life. It's like moments where you realize like everything could be different. Nothing I know is like has some sort of universal like truth, and like I could learn something tomorrow that like completely changes the way I see the world. And so yeah, that's what I love about like this like whole new world of magic, because it just changes the book in really like exciting ways.
That makes me think two things. One, that this just came to me as you were speaking. The worldview that we are given in the first book is mostly the worldview from the perspective of the Guardians, at least when it comes to like orogeny.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this scientific, like very single-minded approach to orogeny and the understanding of it. And now we're getting like the other or another side of that story through magic in book 2. So now I'm like, shit, what's book 3 going to be like?
Right.
The other thing that you were just making me think about, Reed, was how quickly one's entire world can shift with like new information. And I was listening to this podcast. I forget what show it was, but somebody was basically saying this point, like, you know, I think this actually happened to him. He was saying, I grew up and thought that my life was great. Like, I thought that I lived a really magical, beautiful, whole life as a kid. And then I got to college and someone told me about their childhood. And I realized I grew up super poor. And, you know, that person, that guy's worldview changed in a very short amount of time. And in some ways that was part of that is part of my own class understanding of myself. Like, you know, for the most part, growing up, I felt like I had most things I needed. You know, we had food, we had housing, you know, parents had cars. We could like, you know, I played trombone and violin. My brother played sports, and, you know, we didn't get to go on all the school field trips. Like, we didn't get to go to Washington, D.C. or to New York City, but I was like, I don't need that. Things are mostly fine. I mean, things are fine. Like, things are good. I love my life. And I got older and I was like, oh, you all went to vacations on airplanes? Like, what? People do, like, you were 5 when you flew on an airplane and you did that every year? Whoa, my life is different. Anywho, I just appreciate what you were saying about how introduction of magic really changes the whole worldview.
So when you got to college and you were talking to people who were going on vacations on airplanes and everything, did you feel less about your perceived magical childhood, or just different, or
I guess if I'm being honest, that was more like high school. And I think I had been doing enough social justice work to know that, or like to feel grounded in my experience and not feel shame about it. But I was definitely surprised. I could say more, but I think that's like the summary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many layers in the context of like magic changing everything, and magic is kind of substitute for like there's this significant piece of information that comes in, right? And like you in high school get a significant piece of information about like, oh, there's some people out there living differently. Like it's the connection you were making between like the magic comment and like, oh wow, there's some people out there that are living differently with this magic kind of thing. I totally get that. And it's one of the things I've loved about these two books so far. And I'm really looking forward to in the third book is this space around like how you think you know something, and then it's not that you don't know it, but you know something, and it's not even completely different, but like you know something far more nuanced the next time around. And so it's been a really interesting and cool journey, like how she set up who we're even really mainly focusing on in the books, be it Nasun or Esun, and their journeys, and like trying to figure out like, okay, who is who and who are the same people and all the other kinds of things. But like getting to the third book, I'm like, how's this all going to come? How are these relationships going to, originally I think, how are these relationships all going to come together? How am I going to see the ties? But then more as I kind of go into this space of like, every time I think I know something completely different happens. I'm like, how are these going to be like completely untangled? So I haven't yet started the third book because I'll start getting them confused, but I can't wait because I'm just like, how does this all come together? I'm like, totally not expecting a happy ending, so I'm like, oh, maybe there will be one.
Yeah, I'm not expecting a happy ending either. Especially if like it's building up to something, some sort of reunion of like Nasun, Esun, Shafa, and like there's just so much there between the three of them. Like it's not like they're gonna sit down and like talk it out. Like
yeah, I hadn't even thought about the fact that that's probably gonna happen.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God, what is that gonna be like?
I was just gonna say one other little aspect aside from the magic and the very earth focused theme to both of these books is it's not lost on me the space around like the moon being out of orbit and trying to bring it back into orbit, and mostly because like every now and then I come in and out of like, okay, so it's new moon, it's full moon, and the more I focus on like moon cycles, and that's all a function of where it is in its orbit and all that kind of stuff, like the more I start to like understand how my own life, my own moods even, to much people's chagrin, are like pretty, and then just the flow of water, which we don't really hear or talk a lot about in either of these books, right? But like that whole moon orbit space in the context of magic, when I think of magic, I definitely think of like pieces of earth holding magic, but then like the moon kind of piece that's this like circulating body, quite frankly, around the bigger picture, like the whole space of like still being like, hey, not soon, we need to work together and get this back in orbit kind of thing. I'm like, here I am. That was one of those shifts where I was like, here I am thinking like we only need to focus on the earth being better, and oh yeah, it's not well because of this other tertiary body out there that we haven't even really been talking about.
That's a great point. Did you all hear N.K. Jemisin get interviewed by Ezra Klein.
I did not.
Check it out. It's just on the Ezra Klein Show podcast. One of the things that she talks about in that interview, or maybe somewhere I read it, or basically she was like, a powerful element of world building is that you get to be really intentional about where you direct people's attention, and that includes directing their attention away from something until you are ready to bring it into focus.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was such a great line.
Yeah.
And based on that interview, or wherever I heard her say that, she was like very intentional. Because like, was it at the end of the first book where Alabaster says to Essen, like, have you heard of the moon? And it's like this like shock, like,
Yeah.
whoa, right, we haven't talked about the moon at all.
Yeah.
Right.
She does that really powerfully, because she ends this book like that too, right? Like, what does she say? How does it? I don't have my book with me, but there's some little line.
Oh, Nassen's talking to Steele at the end and talking about how to bring back the moon.
Maybe that's not what I'm thinking about. Maybe I'm thinking about something else.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like I said the thing that I wanted to say, which is N.K. Jamison's really great at building a world and then like shifting your attention to something that we weren't focusing on. And that's like it's like rhetorically powerful. And when I think about real world parallels, it's also like it's a literal power play. When I think about like systems and systems of domination.
Yeah.
If you direct people's attention, whoever controls how people's attention is directed is a very powerful person, or those are powerful people.
Yeah, wow, it's such a good, wow. I need to listen to that podcast. I mean, this is something I think about, not consciously, but like it happens all the time in my day-to-day world. It's just like, what is even considered like possible? And like what's not talked about, what like will never be on the agenda. And as a result, it's not even like considered in the realm of like feasibility. It's all about like power and previous decisions. I just love how, like what you're saying. I love how with with these small lines, you realize that like there's just so much about this world that you don't know or understand. Like these characters have been living without a moon, but you don't understand that until kind of basically the very end where she mentions this. And so it's like, if there's this obvious thing or seemingly obvious thing that we take for granted that should be there, but it's not, like what else is there? It's like a wonderful like possibility that introduces when you just, what you presume to be there is not there. What else do we know about?
Bernadette, I also think. Oh yeah, you
No,
go.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm also, as I try to do more alignment of my life with the seasons and with the earth, and I host this queer full moon circle for men or male identified folk, and what I totally am like trying, and that circle is a part of me trying to put my awareness more on the fact that our bodies are actually aligned with the moon and how the moon impacts the earth. And when you were talking, it just made me think, like, when we don't have things like that to, I don't know if it's like regulate our rhythm. That's the phrase that's sort of coming to mind. I guess I'll just read to your point too. Like, when we don't have things to regulate our rhythm, we might not even recognize how fucked up we are. Like,
that's right.
like, seasons have been happening for thousands of years, or like tens of thousands of years, like based on the appendix. Like, I forget, they're like pre-imperial, post-imperial time.
Yeah.
And like the earliest season pre-imperial is like 12,000 pre-imperial or something like that. It's like for thousands of years these seasons have been happening. And is all that because the moon got swung off? Like, how long has the planet been under this tyrannical season situation? And yeah, I just think about, you know, how much, like specifically in this full moon circle situation, like how much are men's worlds off balance because we are not attuned to the moon or to like natural rhythms. There are many things that are fucking with us. And as a result, men are fucking with women and gender non-conforming folk. And there's more complexity to all of that. But anyways, I'm just like thinking about how being in tune with something that is so important might make things like seasons go away. What's the parallel for that in contemporary ending patriarchy space?
Man,
I don't know, that was a random rant.
that's deep, especially in the focus on like the inner relationship, like the whole father-daughter relationship, but then the mother-daughter and the journeys that they're all on back to or from each other. Like, oh my goodness, yeah, wow. I'll be reading this next book in a different light.
Can you say more about the like link between the moon stuff and all these other interrelationships? Like, what do you, not to hypothesize, but just like, well, I don't know, maybe to hypothesize. Just, could you say a little more? I'm curious about what you mean.
Yeah, because like, especially listening to you talk about like men not being attuned to like cycles, right? Like women might be, just because of like cyclical flow of like living life. And it's really interesting to me as they're all on their journeys and everything that like, and I'm making some wild assumptions a little bit about like who's male, who's female in the book, right? But like that whole space of I think it's what I mean is from the space of like Seal, who I assume to be male, is Stone Eater, who's like, yeah, Nessun, let's go get this. And I see it as like the hopeful space of to the point of like bringing down patriarchy and like saying like he's going to a woman to be like, hey, we need to do this together. And I kind of make it as this parallel of like the men in my life who have come to a space of like understanding that patriarchy is not a good thing and it needs to be dismantled, and we need to get back in flow with something much bigger than ourselves. And maybe I'm sure I am reading way too much into Steele at this point in time, but like so far I'm in this space of like, yeah, again, to that kind of full circle from the very beginning comment that I was making about like, it can't be just Black liberation. It has to be all of us getting free, or we start turning to alabaster, and white folks start turning to stone if they don't see a part in it. I think men start turning to stone too if they don't see a part in like rectifying this world. And yeah, I'm really interested to see how that really plays itself out as they go to put the moon back on course. The male-female dynamic, and not so much in a gendered like you're male, you're female, but more in an energetic force flow kind of space. Like I imagine they're going to probably need to use some force to put the moon back into a particular orbit, but that's the whole like things just completely change when you least expect them. That maybe not. Maybe it will be more of a flow thing that gets it back into orbit.
Interesting. That's so interesting. I've heard from, there are two folks in my life who I think have introduced this framing to me of like the divine masculine and the divine feminine, where the divine masculine is like doing energy and the divine feminine is being energy. And like all of us have both of them, and some of us have been conditioned to lean more heavily towards one or the other. But as you say, you assume that there's going to need to be a lot of force to get the moon back into place, but maybe there's another way. And as I think about what's happening on the planet, it seems like masculine energy has been out of control for a long time, maybe centuries or millennia, and we're rebalancing into the feminine, or like feminine energy is rebalancing. And I personally think a lot of what men need to do is learn how to be, like just be, like be alone, be with each other, and then be across. And now I really hope that the way they put the moon back into place is more of a flow process.
Yeah.
Because that would be great modeling for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and a process that's like, the things have been out of whack for so long, and the cycle just seems to like continuously repeat itself. And no one, if people just feel like helpless to change it, feel like if the solution is like magic or something that people just have within them already, it's such a, it's just like such a more hopeful proposition of like, we're capable of changing this just by looking within ourselves and like being with ourselves. But we have to first look and make that discovery. Yeah. I hope it answers that question too. Yeah.
Oh wait, so where are you?
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to make a hard lane change to talk about this book as it relates to some of the other books we've read.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm obviously thinking about Octavia Butler. And okay, did we read the Patternist series? I cannot remember.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the second book in the parable of the the parable of the talent and the parable of the sower, parable of the talent duo. Have you both read that? Did we talk about that here? No, I'm like struggling to remember.
Yeah,
okay,
we did.
We did.
We haven't talked about it. Yeah, 'cause I haven't read it.
Wait, you haven't read it?
I haven't. No.
So the two of us read it.
Oh no, I can't say the thing.
Yeah.
Reed and I read it.
Yeah.
You can say
No, I can't.
You can
I
say
definitely
something.
can't.
It's too good. It's too good to get
It's
something
too
more.
good.
Yeah.
It's too good.
All right.
Okay, well, I will just say what happened when Essen and Yika, like near the end of the book, were like teaching each other. Or I guess it was just Yika taught Essen how to build a network.
Mm.
And like Yika does her little like square, like make a staircase with my orogeny in a way that no Fulcrum origin has ever seen. Like, first of all, that was amazing. And I really loved N.K. Jamison's like just like throwing that in there. And, you know, Essen had seen for a long time. They're like, oh yeah, Yika has ability to control Earth in a way that I don't. She hasn't been trained, but she can do stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really great way to be like, yeah, you actually don't have to be trained by like the system to be good at your orogeny or your skill, like your innate ability. So that was cool. But then, yeah, Yika teaches Essen how to draw on all of the origins in a network at once to do stuff. And then Essen's like, oh, that's how I make the network of Obelisk.
Yeah.
There's just great parallels between lots of Octavia Butler work and that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I promise to get
Now I'm really curious which specific part of the Parable series. But you don't
I'm thinking about the Parable series, I'm thinking about the Patternist series, and I'm also kind of thinking about the Xenogenesis trilogy.
Can you say a little more?
We read the Xenogenesis.
Yeah.
We read, all three of us did that one, right?
Which one?
I guess it's called Lilith's Brood. It's like, yeah. Okay, so you know when? Oh my gosh, I don't remember any of the characters' names. The Owen Collie, like kid in the set, or Akin. Do you remember the like?
I can't remember
the like little boy-ish character who was like becoming an adult.
Yes, I do remember.
Oh yeah.
And he's like this new type of being that no one really understands. But he has those scenes where he like, you know, like the Owen Collie have this like collective consciousness that the adults all get, and they're all afraid of him tapping into it because they're like, he's too powerful, he's gonna fuck it up. And then he like taps into it and like convinces everyone that they should be doing this other thing. He's like, no, we anyways, I'm just I see this like there's like a lot of power in these individuals who kind of take two different systems and like intersect them and make something new possible. Yeah, I was stunned when I saw that. And then just also thinking about, you know, white supremacy, racism, sexism, classism, just like what are the ways that our forward trajectory is actually going to take intersecting these things that have never been intersected before. And I guess I don't mean that in like an intersectional way. I mean, like, if we look at one of those things, like misogyny, I feel like what we're talking about mostly these days, like the dominant narrative is like, of change makers is like, men are fucked up. It's time for women to be on top and in charge, and men need to get out of the way. And that's not, like, people with more nuance don't say that, but I think like the dominant like news stories, like that's the story that they're telling. It's like men need to leave. And I'm just so curious about Tavia's thinking about that stuff, and Davis is thinking about that, and like what their writing makes possible in terms of the both and. Obviously knowing that there's actually is a lot of shitty things. There's a lot of shitty stuff that's happening for sure. But what like forward motion looks like taking the best of all of the things. Okay, anyway, that was the parallel I wanted to make. I'm curious what y'all think about that, and if there are other parallels to other books we've read.
Yeah, and not made that connection. I'm still processing what you say. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so many books, so many different ways. But and most of them not of this genre, but like yeah, two of the other books that I'm reading right now are and I always see connections between everything. So like I'm well positioned at my organization where we don't say no to hardly anything because we're like, oh, I can see how that relates to XYZ. So bear with me. But the two books that I'm reading concurrently right now are Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist and Nesma. What's that?
I was saying, yeah.
Yeah, and also My Grandmother's Hands, like understanding how trauma shows up in our bodies and how we can like release that and not just think through trauma. And it all kind of comes to a head in this space of like personal identity, both in the Kendi book where he's like, racist isn't a flag or a term about you as an identifier, like you are a racist, so much as like, what are the things that you're hooked into and you believe in terms of like policies, practices, procedures that have disparate racially based outcomes, that you can see a whole racial group as being oppressed by things. And so I've been in a space a lot at work where we're talking a lot about like our own organizational identity and what's the intersection between going from a founder white male doing work on behalf of Black and Brown communities to like, what do we want our next leader to look like? And a lot of that has unearthed a lot of this space around like the intersections and who gets to speak up, who gets to like do the work, all of that kind of stuff. And so as I read through these, and probably am oversensitive, as I've talked about all day today, or all throughout our session, about like the relational dynamics and defining them not as like these two women or this man and this woman, but more from a father-daughter, mother-daughter kind of space. Like it's really interesting to me the struggles we have at my work, me included, around just that. Who gets to take up space to like do what? Like do the guys get to be like, okay, yeah, I can see that patriarchy sucks and that like I have a role in fixing it, or are they getting shut down at my job by other people who are like, you started this, you benefit from this, but you don't even get a say in this kind of thing, and don't get to think about it, don't get to do anything but like move out of the way so that we can fix it kind of thing. And it's a really interesting space that I live in the context of reading all of these three books pretty much overlapping.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, when I think back on what I've learned from like Octavia Butler's work, and when I see in N.K. Jemisin, it's this lesson of a feeling that this is constant like reminder that what we need to do in order to survive like today and the future is not what we've been doing in the past, which seems like really basic, but it's just so clear in Octavia Butler's work, especially where it's like these ways of living in the past that people try to apply again in the face of like kind of major political change or like climate disaster. This don't work. And so if you're going back to those modes, because it's what you've learned, you're trying to apply that mode in the face of like complete change, it won't be functional. And then for N.K. Jemisin, it's like I feel like what we see, at least the second book, is that this world has been in a constant state of disaster. No one knows how to get out of it, but then we're introduced to this way where it's essentially like Rogas and humans living together, and it seems to work for a while. But now, at the end of this book, like that way of life that seemed to have worked for a little while, that was in this like Castrima like geode, that's falling apart. And so like we're gonna have to rebuild something again, like learning on what we may have worked last time. Like what comes like next, I think is something that like both N.K. Jemisin and like Octavia Butler are constantly reminding us of like, you don't entirely know what's going to come next. You don't entirely know what's going to work next. But if you keep trying to like entirely lean upon the past, this won't work. And if you don't like learn that lesson, like like you're gonna really struggle. Yeah, and I think I've been thinking about that a lot as well. Like at work, my personal life, just I know there's things to draw on in the past, but like I can't totally rely on that as like a guide for the future.
That's a really great point. I do think you're right that it's basic, but also it's so basic that seemingly somehow most people have not gotten that reality, just like about the world. Like I think the definition of, I mean, this is flat. This is too flat, but like many people who consider themselves conservative at a surface level are in that camp. They're like, what we have now is the way that we should hold things because we know that this has worked. I know there's more to conservatism than that, but yeah, that's a really good point about these works. Okay, well, we should probably wind down. I'm trying to remember. Oh, do we make predictions? Should we make predictions about the next book? I feel like I've done that before, and that's fun. But also, we can close any way that's my idea for how we close. But we can do if you all have other ideas.
I like that
prediction.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Nobody's read it, right?
That's correct. I have not read it.
I've read the first 2 pages.
Okay, first few pages.
Ooh, okay.
He's like, everything's great.
Yeah, I don't even know like where to predict.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I want to focus on particular characters' experience or like some overarching like story.
Great that.
It's funny because I keep running through, I think this is going to happen. Then I'm like, but you know, it's going to be like the complete opposite. And so like, my mind's just spinning through all these, like, if this, then no, actually that.
You have a very strategic mind.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say the only prediction that I want to make in this moment is that Shafa becomes a good character. That's my prediction and my hope. I think Shafa is going to be like key to unlocking the connection between Essen and Nassim, like becoming the savior characters. I also think they're going to be the savior characters. Or I hope they're going to be the savior characters.
And it's going to be Shafa. Okay.
I mean, I think, like, I hope that Shafa is the key that supports other people being heroes. I don't want Shafa to be the hero.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
Sorry, let me make that clear.
I hope we'll, in general, just learn more about the Stone Eaters and like what's going on with them. I hope for Hoa, well, I guess I'll predict for Hoa in particular, that like he'll turn out to be more of like a evil, conniving kind of like character in the background that's caused like, I don't know. I feel like he's just been a character right now that's just kind of been like the sidekick in some ways and kind of like help push the story along, mostly for Essen. I feel like he'll turn out to be someone like we just don't expect him to be, and like he just won't, because he's been like we've seen as like an innocent kid for the most part, and it's like a physical form, but like as he like changes into this like adult form now, we'll see like a different side of him.
And for me, I think I've already mentioned this, but like even beyond the like characters that we talk about that are, I mean, basically, so like I see the Earth itself and the Moon as characters in and of themselves in the world building that she does, and so I'm really curious to see how the Moon plays into the bigger story, and maybe take a bigger role, because I feel like we've done a lot of time on Earth, and Earth has ended, and the usual, sci-fi trope is like, we got to find someplace else because we've fucked up Earth. And so, like, seeing the, I don't, that's, again, my mind working backwards and forwards and all that, right? Like, I don't see it being like, oh, we've got to go build a colony on the moon or anything like that, but like how we can figure out how to fix the messes that we made here on Earth by being otherworldly, and how the moon really plays into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm excited for that. Like, what does the moon want? We know what Earth wants.
Yeah, what does the moon want?
What's the moon want? Yeah.
That.
Wait, do we know what Earth wants?
That.
I don't know if Earth wants. I don't know.
I thought we hear from.
It's an Earth just want to like control.
I thought we hear that the moon is gone, and the idea is that if you bring the moon back, Earth will be less pissed.
Yeah.
But do we actually know that?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so. I think everyone's just saying bring the moon back, then Earth will be like happy again.
Anyway, okay, well, we should go. I am sleepy, and I have an hour commute to get home.
Oh,
and I'm teaching in the morning, so I'm like, ooh,
Oh,
I'm gonna hit this
I
dusty trail.
Y'all to be late for y'all hookups for this. I really do appreciate that. We should think about, I don't know if it works for y'all, but like think about shifting to the other end of the spectrum. Like I could get up really early to do a debrief too. So.
Heard. I feel really fine doing it late because it's definitely after work hours, and that just feels, that's easy.
yeah, this has been working for me.
Reed, how do you feel?
Yeah, I like doing it after work. It's a little treat. After work treat.
Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah, cool. Sweet.
All right.
Well,
on to third book.
On to book 3. Yo, let's get this Stone Sky situation. Like, what is about to happen?
Oh
wait, I had another prediction, which is that all the obelisks like create like a, you know what's that movie? Oh my gosh, with Katniss, Everdeen. Oh my gosh,
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. Yeah, for like all the obelisks like make like a fake sky world. They like contain the Earth in this weird like force field way. Okay, that was my actual prediction. Okay, that's all. Out here. Okay, for real. Stone Sky.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Send y'all a doodle.
All right.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks,
have a good night,
as always, for your all wonderful engagement around books and making me see the world, helping me to see the world in new and exciting ways.
Ashe.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Catch y'all later.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
Good
y'all.
night.
Bye.